G'day everyone, Artist Wayne Delson here with the last video of the year, and it's a DR650 adventure. And this is an action-packed video about 3 awesome rides. But before I do, I entered this picture in the Vince Strang calendar competition. And guess what? I got a free calendar. There's the picture there. I'd also like to show you my favourite riding shirt. And no, I didn't get attacked by a drop bear. It was something far worse, my own stupidity.
Let's get ready to ride!
Now to find out what happened, we need to go back in time. We need to go back 2 months when I got together with my mate, Dusty Taylor. And boy did we have a ripper of a ride. I met Dusty at 8 o'clock in the morning at Laguna at the Great North Trading Post, where we had a bite to eat, and after breakfast we hit the trails through the Yengo National Park. The weather was absolutely perfect for riding. It was slightly overcast with a little bit of drizzle every now and again. There was no dust, so it was perfect for videoing. Once we hit the Putty Road, we then turned off onto the Commission Road. Then shortly after, we took a left turn to explore trails that we had never ridden before. And that's what adventure riding's all about, finding new trails to ride. Dusty and I were going to see if we could ride all the way to Rylstone. Unfortunately, the trail has a locked gate, but wouldn't that be fantastic to be able to ride all the way up to Mudgee? Don't even ask. What happens on the trails stays on the trails. Isn't that right, Dusty? We made our way up to the Three Ways Crossing, and I highly recommend this ride because the scenery is absolutely breathtaking. Everywhere we went, we were just shaking our heads, thinking, wow. And have a look to the left, it's a rock wallaby, and it's a wonder it didn't jump off and attack me. And finally, Dusty and I arrived at the Sheepskin Hut, and from there we headed back out to the Putty Road and had lunch at the Bulga Pub. I left home at 6:30 in the morning, and I arrived home at 7:30 in the evening. Had an absolutely bonza ride. The following weekend I met up with Dusty again, and this time he was riding with Mike, Justin and Glenn. I met them in the Yengo National Park. This time Dusty and Mike were riding their chook chasers, and as you can see there'd been a lot of rain. On this particular weekend Jackie and I had planned to camp, but it was far too wet. But it didn't stop me from heading out and meeting the boys for some great riding. It's always good to watch these two as they spar with one another on the trails. We had a top day's riding, and as the day progressed we ended up at Laguna for a nice lunch. I got to have a ride on Justin's brand new Suzuki DR650, and we also checked out the Aboriginal rock art in Yengo National Park, and I had a chat with Glenn about his upcoming motorcycle trip in beautiful New Zealand. A fantastic day's riding with a great bunch of blokes, but it's not a proper ride if I'm not being attacked by Skippy and his mates. And now we come to Ride 3. This was the following weekend, and it's the ride where it went just a little pear-shaped for yours truly. Alan and Michael were riding their KTMs and had joined us for the day's ride, and camping that night at the Sheepskin Hut was Jackie, BB, Alex, Bretto and myself. We all met at Arimba, rode through the State Forest, then over to Laguna where we had breakfast at the Great North Trading Post. Then we took off into the Yengo National Park and headed towards Putty Road. We had a little bit of drizzle in the morning, but it was turning out to be a beautiful day for riding. Jackie and I were keen to test out our new tent that we were taking with us to Tasmania for our Christmas motorcycle adventure. It's a nice big 4-man tent with a separate section at the front, and we can stand up in it. It'll replace our old 3-man tent, and now we have plenty of room for all of our motorcycle gear and our camp chairs and table, and we can store them away at night. It's going to be camping bliss, and what better place to have an adventure than in Tasmania? And once we arrived at the private section of Yengo, it was time to farewell Alan and Michael, and a quick catch up with some of the GS girls who were out and about that day. Then we were off onto the Putty Road, and then we took the turn off to the Commission Road, which will take you all the way to Bulga or Jerry's Plains. But we weren't travelling that far. We were going to take the turn off and head over to the Sheepskin Hut camping area. And whenever I come to sand, it's always fun to pull over and watch the other boys come through, especially BB on that massive 1200 Super Tanneray. We were all taking a different route than Dusty and I had 2 weeks before this ride. This way's a little bit quicker, and we wanted to get to our campsite and have plenty of time to put up our tents and just sit around and relax. But not before stopping and giving Alex a hand. That's the beauty of riding with friends. There's always a friend there that can take some video and photos when you get stuck. And finally we arrived at the trail that leads down to the Sheepskin Hut. It had been a huge day of riding, especially for BB who lives down near Tasmania. And if you look at where Brett's riding right now to his left, 40 minutes from now I'd be laying in that 4-wheel drive track with my DR650 laying on top of me. Because as soon as we put up our tents, I decided to hop on the bike and grab some firewood up near the Sheepskin Hut. But I rode off without a jacket, without gloves and without a helmet. And the skin off my forearms is nothing compared to the sore neck, sore shoulder, sore ribs, sore hip and sore calf muscle that I inflicted on myself. So that there, my friends, is a photo of a prized idiot.